Okay, we are recording. So,
Woohoo!
welcome. This is so exciting. Welcome, everybody. I'm Crystal,
And I am Sheena.
and we are the hosts of the new show called Narrow Squeak. I'm so
Hell
excited.
yeah, we are.
So, guys, this is our second attempt at a first episode. Well, the first recording went really well, and we had some great stories and some great conversation. I may not be the best at this yet, and I might have deleted it. So here we sit with our second conversation, but first actual recording that we're going to get to put out there. And I promise I won't delete
Yes.
this. Sorry, Sheena.
So Crystal's sitting in her trailer in her backyard for this recording. And I am currently at a cottage sitting in a stairwell like a creep because this seems to be where I get the best reception in the whole place.
That's fine. Sheena is not doing herself justice. She is sitting in a cottage that is beautiful with a nice glass of wine and a fire roasting. So let's give credit where it's due.
Exactly.
So to get started, I wondered if we could talk about a couple things to start, like who we are. Sheena, do you want to go first and kind of tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Sheena, and I don't really know what to say about myself. I am into social work, and that's actually how Crystal and I know each other. We've been fortunate enough to work for the same organization for probably like 8 or 9 years now. So that's been pretty awesome. And I don't even remember actually our first conversation, how we figured out we both loved true crime, but I know that it started quite a while ago, and we would often share stories and links and, on work time be discussing all these morbid facts that we were learning. So after all of that, we kind of decided it would be maybe a good idea to record some of our conversations to share with other people that kind of also love true crime.
Yes, so that's exactly it. And I can actually remember what it was that told me that you like true crime. And it was when our friend, I believe, Christine, I think it was, brought you your encyclopedia of serial killers.
Oh, yes. And I was carrying it around the office with me.
You were so proud of that book, and you were also slightly like, please don't judge me. And there was there was no judgment whatsoever. I was totally into it. And then we started talking about the different cases, and you went right to Ed Gein.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I like to do.
We didn't even start out slow. We just went right for it. So and it was perfect.
Yeah, it's been pretty awesome. So Crystal mentioned kind of wanting to start a podcast, and I sort of just invited myself, and I was like, hey, you know what? If you're going to actually do a podcast, I'm totally down to do one. So here we are, finally recording our second episode.
Thanks, Sheena.
Yeah.
So what we thought we'd do is, first of all, we would love to hear your stories of ways that you've interacted with a killer or someone that robbed a bank, or just those crime stories that have you directly involved. We want to hear them because we want to read them. And if it's a really good one and you're willing, we'd even love to talk to you directly, which is kind of cool. But what we're going to do while we're waiting for those to happen is I think we're going to do themed episodes. So this one is, how did you get started? So what was it about true crime that brought you in? Which case was it that brought you in? That's the first episode that we're going to do. So
yeah,
I don't know.
It's super exciting, and it's been actually kind of cool. So since I've been sort of telling people that we're getting started on this, it's pretty fascinating, actually, the stories that you'll hear from people. I was having a glass of wine with a couple friends, and they're a little bit older than I am, and they did let me know that while Paul Bernardo was deemed the Scarborough rapist, that he had actually been in their backyard and chased away by one of their boyfriends at the time. And I was like, holy crap, I had no idea that was even, he was so close to you guys. And then another time I was getting my hair done and my hairdresser let me know that she was doing her psychology degree at Queen's University. And this is back in the 90s, and somebody was emailing in, and lo and behold, it was fucking Carla Homolka. That was a part of the psychology course with her, and who got her psychology degree. Kudos to the government of Canada. So it's pretty cool. I know. So it's been really neat to hear people's stories and find out, that little twisted side of them.
Oh, exactly. So when I told my mother-in-law that we were doing this, the first thing she said is, well, you know that Paul, my father-in-law, he knew this guy who beheaded his girlfriend. No.
Oh, Jesus.
No, that's never come up in conversation. Can we roll that back and can we start from the beginning, please?
Yeah. Let's not skip past that.
Let's go back. Let's hear the whole thing. Now, tonight, I totally need to go look up this story to find out what actually happened.
Oh, that's so amazing.
Right?
I love it.
People are just coming out of the woodwork with their stories, and it's so awesome.
I know.
Now
you tell someone you're into this weird stuff, and they're like, oh, blah, 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 like word vomit, and they have all this like cool information. You're like, this is so cool. I like you even more now.
And people that you didn't expect, you're like, oh, you're going to cringe when I tell you what I'm doing. And they're like, oh, well, listen to this. I've got a story for you. It's like, can you please just write that down? I want every dirty detail.
Yes. That's amazing.
It is. It's so cool.
Yeah. So, we decided that the first episode we were going to share with you guys was, I thought it would be kind of cool just to let everyone kind of know a little bit more about us, and then maybe talk about the story that sort of got us hooked on true crime in the first place, because everyone has that one story that they hear it and it just kind of like mortifies them to the bone, but also sparks this curiosity in them, and then you just can't stop.
It's like your origin story.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Sheena, when you suggested this, did you know right away which one you wanted to do? Like right from the start?
100%.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it has followed me since I was 10, and I just haven't been able to get it out of my head. And to be 100% honest, I haven't really looked back on a lot of the details for it since kind of going back for this podcast. But since I have, I'm mortified over again. And I can't believe I was 10 years old when I started like listening to this stuff.
I know. Well, I had the same, so I didn't have the same experience as you. When you suggested we do this, I actually had to think back, because once I got into it, I just got into it. And it was just, I read everything. Like I absorbed as much as I could. So then I had to figure out which story actually started it. And then I don't know what I was doing. My aunt said something, and it was like, that's it. That's the one. That's the story. So I'm excited to hear yours, and I'm excited to tell mine, because this is a case that I know quite a bit about too, which is super cool. Okay. So we've already agreed that Sheena will go first.
Yes. So this is the story of Maddie Clifton and Joshua Phillips. So as I kind of said before, the story has actually haunted me since I was about 10 years old. It aired in 1998. And so it aired on an episode of 48 Hours. So I will say that I spent more hours than I would, probably more than 48, to be 100% honest, trying to find this damn episode, because I wanted to rewatch the one that got me intrigued. Long story short, I ended up with a virus on my iPhone, which I did not know you could get.
Oh.
So then I had to go on YouTube and figure out how to get rid of the virus on my phone. So it got this whole, yeah, it was a whole thing. It inputted all this stuff on my calendar. So I didn't actually get to rewatch the episode, but I've taken a lot of time to do some more. It was a whole thing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, story of my life. But the story has hooked me onto true crime. to the point where I am that weirdo at a party that'll just randomly drop disturbing information that not one like person has asked for. It's like, oh yeah, so did you know this about Jeffrey Dahmer? And people are just like, what the fuck is wrong with this girl? So I blame this story for all of that. All of that aside, though, this story is quite sad and does involve the death of a child. So if you are easily triggered, you may want to skip my portion of the cast.
Way to start it out like super sad, Sheena. Way to go.
I know. Yeah. But if you're a trooper and you're still here, this is that story. So I'm going to take you back November 3rd, 1998. Maddie Clifton and her older sister, Jessie Clifton, who was, Maddie was 8 and Jessie was 11. They had been both outside playing. However, they weren't playing together. Dinner time rolls around and their mother, like most mothers in the Jacksonville, Florida neighborhood that they were in, starts yelling out the door, it's dinner time in the house, kids, blah, 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 hoping that all the kids are going to make their way back to the dinner table. However, on this evening, Madison did not show. As a mother myself, I can't even begin to imagine the terror that they would have immediately felt. Jessie, her sister, Steve is dad, and Sheila's the mom. They began yelling at her name, knocking on doors in the neighborhood, kind of, frantically looking for Maddie. No sign of her. So by November 4th, which is the next day, they're out and they're handing out flyers, knocking on doors still, kind of looking for her. Someone that's driving by stops and says, oh, I saw that little girl. She was playing golf with an older gentleman. So there was an older man, about 45 years of age at the time. He lived a few doors down from the Cliftons. The cops immediately, they're like, this has got to be our guy. They search his home several times, bring him in for a polygraph test, which he fails. And however, they had no evidence that it was him, and his alibi was completely solid. He did, in fact, have 2 previous sexual assault charges from his 20s. And that was the only lead that the cops had. And it went cold from there. So the search for the 8-year-old Maddie continues with heavy police presence in their suburb because no one had any idea who took her, where she was, and why this happened. So it was the unknown nature of her disappearance that kind of made everyone feel even more uneasy. And people, they started to worry that maybe, they were coming after Jessie too, her older sister. They had no idea. So her family, I know. So at this point, her family is offering a $50,000 reward. Within a day or two, they double it to $100,000. They're on the news begging, like, if you have our daughter, please bring her home. They're even speaking directly to her on the news outlets saying, like, Maddie, if you can hear us, we love you and we're ready for you to return home.
Oh, Jesus.
I know. I told you this was a little heavy.
When did this happen? What was the year?
98.
Okay, so we were kids. Like, how old was Maddie when she went missing?
I would have been 8. So I was around Maddie's age. I would have been 10.
So understandable why this kind of stands out to you.
Yeah. I don't know why the fuck I was watching this at 10 years old. Like, hello. Should have been watching Barney or some shit, not this. This obviously explains a lot of my life.
What 10-year-old do you know watches Barney?
Well, I don't know. Maybe that would have made me even weirder. I have no idea.
Oh my God.
So the cops are just kind of sitting in the neighborhood. And then, so they end up rallying up like 400 volunteers. They continue to canvass the area. They're looking in ditches and garbage bins, handing out flyers still, etc. This goes on for 7 days. The family's obviously in complete fucking anguish, hoping.
Oh my God.
Yeah, 7 days of just not knowing. Yeah, just waiting and looking, and no leads, nothing during this time. So they're just hoping that, Maddie's going to make her way home. I can't even fucking imagine. Like, it's horrifying to me to even think about this. Like, Dominic doesn't answer his phone for 1 minute, and I'm like panicked. So 7 days, like, I can't even begin to fathom.
That's your world. That's everything. So to have 7 days not knowing where they are is just excruciating.
Yeah, it's absolutely terrible. So yeah, we're going to skip ahead to November 10th, 1998. It's 7:30 in the morning, and across the street from the Cliftons lives the Phillips family. There in that household, there's 14-year-old Joshua Earl Patrick Phillips, his mother Melissa, and father Stephen.
Oh my God, I think I know this story.
Okay.
Okay.
The family of three had been tirelessly helping in the week-long search for Maddie. Josh, the 14-year-old, had been out looking, hanging posters, whatever. So it's 7:30 in the morning. Josh is on the school bus. He's on his way to school. And Steve, the dad, is off for work. Melissa, the mom, has been, and as the mother of a teenage son, I know what this feels like harassing her son, like, clean your room, get your stank ass room clean. Josh is not. So his mother's like, you know what? I have a couple hours before I have to get to work. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to clean. So she grabs a garbage bag. She goes into his room. He has 3 birds in his room, plus this regular stench of a teenage boy. So if you can imagine how that room smells, his mother seems to find a stronger odor than usual.
Yes.
Josh has.
I do. I know this one. There was
an
episode of yes, there was an episode of Kids Who Kill.
Yes, he was on that.
Yes, he was. I do know this story.
Yes, 100%.
And it's absolutely horrendous.
Yeah. So the mother's in there. She notices some water on the floor. Josh has a waterbed, of course, because that was like cool in the 90s. So anyway, she's like, oh, his waterbed must be leaking. And then she notices a sock sticking up from under his bed. She gives it a little tug. It doesn't move. So she's like, you know what? This is going to require a little bit more investigation. So she goes out, she grabs a flashlight, and she goes back into his room. So Melissa, the mom, heads back in, geared up, or so she thought. And when she tries to grab the sock again, she feels something pulled inside. This is when she lifts up the mattress and the plywood, and she finds Maddie Clifton's lifeless body. Horrified. Oh, I can't even imagine. Like, oh my God. So first of all, she's like, what the fuck? So her first move is to call her husband, like, I don't know what's going on. So she calls her husband at work. Of course, he doesn't answer. So then she goes into a straight panic, and she runs out her front door, literally across the street to where all the police cruisers are. And she's begging hysterically for the officers to come into her home. This is when both families' lives are forever changed. The sheriffs walk into the home. Yeah?
Thinking about it, thank God she freaked out, because imagine if she hadn't, she might have tried to hide it. But she didn't. She freaked out. She went out and found a police officer, which was exactly what you should do. But not every parent would do that.
Oh, and like, honestly, you have no idea how you're going to, like, I mean, Dom's 13. Like, if I can't, like, what the fuck? Like, if I walked into his room, I mean, hopefully that'll never happen. But I can't imagine, like, not only is your next door neighbor dead, but now your baby is, like, responsible for this. And, like, I just can't imagine what was going through her brain in those like couple seconds that she had to kind of like piece shit together.
Yeah.
It's so horrifying, all of it. So the sheriffs walk into his room and confirm exactly what Melissa had stated. And of course, he's just moseying on to school. So then, you know, everyone gets called to the school, and he's arrested at school for the murder of his next door neighbor, Madison Clifton. So when they're kind of looking back and trying to figure out like what the fuck happened, because Maddie was seen earlier that day around 5 p.m. playing golf. So they're trying to piece together like how she ended up with him. So it turns out when Maddie had been, after she finished playing golf, she goes over to Josh's house and she's like, hey, do you want to play baseball or hang out with me? Josh had been told that there's absolutely no one allowed to be at the home while his parents aren't there. However, he brings Maddie over. They're in the backyard playing baseball. Maddie throws the ball to Josh. He bats it back to her, and it hits her in the eye. At that point, obviously, like, I don't know if you've ever been hit by a baseball, but it hurts. Mm-hmm. Screaming and crying and bleeding, and she's not calming down. He begins to panic, and he bludgeons her with a baseball bat. He then drags her up to his bedroom, grabs a cord, and strangles her for several minutes. Then he hits her again with the bat before shoving her under his waterbed. At this time, it's around, probably 5:30 p.m. So Josh's dad comes home, who it comes out later he was reportedly an abusive alcoholic. So he comes home, Josh hears him, he goes down, says hello, shoots the shit with him for a minute, then he goes back to his room. When he goes back in his room, he hears Maddie moaning. He thought that she had been dead. So then he grabs a knife and he stabs her 11 times.
Jesus.
And then he shoves her back under his bed. So keep in mind, he's been sleeping on top of a dead body for 7 days.
That's insane.
Yeah, I can't even, it's so hard to wrap my head around.
You can't.
Yeah.
You can't ever figure out why someone does something like that. But that, like,
no.
I get he's a kid, right? So his brain is not developed. He can't think these things through on his own. And then you have an abusive father who comes home, and that extra bit of panic probably sets in. Not that
Sets
there's
him
any
over the edge.
Yeah, exactly. There's definitely no justification.
No, not at all.
When you think about that panicked, he stabbed her 11 times. Yeah, because he's panicking, like she's still alive. Oh my God, I'm gonna get caught.
Yeah, like
self-preservation, I guess, set in a way that I'll never understand.
Yeah, well, thank fuck you won't, because I won't play baseball with you, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Oh God, sorry. I make jokes when I'm uncomfortable. That's my little party trick too. So a little side note is when they did find Maddie, she was naked from the waist down. However, there was no sexual assault noted in the autopsy. So during court, obviously they asked Josh, like, why would you do such a heinous thing? And he simply stated that he was so afraid of what the repercussions he would face from his abusive father for having Maddie over in the first place, that he decided killing her would spare him his father's aggression. So in 1999, Joshua was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the death of Maddie Clifton. So this is happening. He's 14 and he's sentenced to life without parole. So obviously Maddie's parents, like, I guess her mom couldn't live in that house anymore, looking across the street, like rightfully so. So her parents get a divorce after 25 years of marriage. The following year, Joshua's dad, Steve, is killed in a car accident. I don't know any more information about that, and then in 2004, his mom began trying to seek new trial for her son, given his young age at the time. However, she wasn't successful in 2004. So fast forward to 2012, that's when the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that sentencing juveniles to life in prison without parole was unconstitutional. I'm surprised it took until 2012 for this research on the adolescent brain confirmed that common sense understanding is different between children and adults, and it's critical to identifying age-appropriate criminal sentences. So you touched on that a little bit when we were talking about his actions and why he might have done that, because their brain isn't developed enough at that time to really understand what they're doing. I guess, like, they're just reacting, but they don't really think of
they still have
anything beyond that.
A survival brain, right? So they're just doing what they can to make sure that they don't get in trouble or they don't get caught. There's not really a sense of repercussion.
No.
Ugh.
So yeah, so totally crazy. And when I was kind of looking into that, I won't talk about it a lot, but in 2012, that change was sparked by 2 other cases. Oddly enough, where the perpetrators were also both 14 at the time they committed their murders. So if anyone listening is interested in learning any more of that, I'm happy to send out some links, because I was doing a little bit of side research on that. But in 2016, Josh's attorney was successful and granted a new sentencing hearing as a result from that 2012 ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court. So in June 2017, and at the new sentencing hearing, he was resentenced to life in prison. However, he is eligible for resentencing in 2023, as that will bring him to 25 years served.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's got 2 more years until he can kind of bring this back to court. So I was watching some of the videos of, like, Maddie Clifton's mom and her sister. So Maddie Clifton's mom was screaming out in court, like, she doesn't want to be on this earth if he's ever released. And then her sister her sister's been kind of speaking a lot recently as well. And Jessie, her sister, so she was 11 at the time of this murder. She didn't realize what actually happened to her sister until she was 16. That's when she learned that her next door neighbor was actually the one responsible for this. So that's obviously taken a toll on her. And she's been very vocal in the media on how this has affected her and her family. And then there's a little bit of side information that kind of came out, but I don't know how viable it is. But it came out that Josh was really into violent pornography, and that he was obsessed with Jessie, the sister. And he went as far as to go into her room and steal a photo of her and put it on his headboard, which I don't know how no one ever saw this or whatever. But it seems like there's a couple other layers to the story, but nothing's really been concrete in any of that evidence.
Yeah, there was, like, I can't remember if it was something they had said in the episode of Kids That Kill or if it was something that I had looked up after the fact, but there was some mention of the fact that he had an infatuation with the sister, and they actually considered whether it was intentional, the killing, and he had actually gone out, like, wanted to kill the sister, but ended up taking the like Maddie home as like a instead of. But I can't remember the details of that, and I don't know if that's something that I read and was never substantiated, or if it was something that had been said in that episode.
Yeah, because there's kind of like little, when you're researching this, there's kind of like little side notes that pop up. But when you're reading, like, some of the like Wikipedia or anything like that, it doesn't state any of that. So it's kind of hard to say whether that's fact or not. But it did pop up in a few write-ups that I saw, so I figured it was kind of worth mentioning. But kind of funny, because as I mentioned earlier with the Karla Homolka doing her psychology degree, so in 2007 Joshua graduated from Blackstone Career Institute as a paralegal, and he's continuing to help fellow inmates with their appeals.
Wow.
So
that's crazy.
Yeah, he shows sort of remorse in some of the videos that I've watched, and I'm a little torn because I think, like, obviously it's absolutely terrible what he did, but again, when you're sort of looking at the adolescent brain, it's hard to say whether, if he had been 30 when this went down, if he would have done it, or sort of, who knows. But hopefully, if he is released, he's been rehabilitated enough and nothing like this will happen again. But it's an extremely, extremely tragic story. But for whatever reason, I remember watching this, like, probably the first time it aired in 1998. And there was a Dixie Chick song that she loved. I don't know if it was Landslide or Wide Open Spaces, but I remember them playing it over and over again. And every time I hear that song, I get chills down my spine because it just brings me back to the sock under the mattress. And it's just like, it's stuck with me forever.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, so that is the story of Maddie Clifton and Joshua Phillips.
Yikes! Well, that's a deep one.
Yep.
To start with.
pretty heavy.
But good on you for going that far. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So sorry. Now I'm gonna just sip my wine and listen to you.
Well, thanks. Nothing like setting the bar high here. Okay, so. For mine is in this. So my story happens like before we were even born, but it has relevance to our childhoods. What I need to do is give you a bit of backstory of where I come from. So to give you an idea, I watched CSI from the first episode.
Oh God, when was that aired?
Well, I need to actually look it up because I wish I had before we started this, but I didn't. So CSI premiered in 2000. So I was 13.
Damn.
My mom, that was the kind of thing she did. When I was 4, she left the movie It in the VCR after watching it, and she went to bed. And in the morning, I got up, and she said, "Just go watch TV." Well, VCRs are easy for a 4-year-old to use, so I pressed play and I watched the original It at 4 years old by myself. Did I mention that my bedroom was full of pictures of clowns at the time? Oh, yeah. So
And Crystal never slept again in her life.
I this might explain where some of my fears come from, but it was so bad. My dad had to go into that room and repaint it and put Disney characters up because I wouldn't sleep in my own bed. Like I would not go where the clowns were. So
no one should ever decorate their child's room with clowns, first off.
No, nobody should ever do that anyways. And Rob thinks it's hilarious because we went to the circus and a clown came up the aisle and I got very uncomfortable and he thought it was the funniest shit ever. Like totally terrified of clowns. This is not a clown story, but this just gives you a bit of an idea of what it was like for me growing up with my mother, who didn't seem to have any sort of censor when it came to me. So,
I know how that feels. So,
yeah, you've been there. So when I was about, I was trying to figure out based on where I know we lived at the time that this movie came out, and I think I was about 6 or 7. And I remember my cousin being over, and her and my mom watched this movie. And I wasn't allowed to watch it at the time, but it had this impression on me, and I think I caught some scenes from it. So it's a movie that I came back to when I was older, and then after I watched the movie, I wanted to learn what the true story was behind it. So the story I'm about to tell is the true story, the actual murder story behind the Amityville horror movies.
I love this story so much. This is so exciting.
I'm glad you like it.
Excited. It might be the half liter of wine I've consumed, but so pumped.
Hey, whatever. So this story has so many layers, and I mean, this rabbit hole took me 3 hours yesterday. Just like it's so convoluted. There are so many different versions of the story. Not to mention the added story of the added one that created the movie, which was the haunting story, which I do I'm going to talk about that as well. So,
I'm so excited.
Let's start with the real story. So this is what actually factually happened. So let's go back to November, and it's funny that both of our cases actually happened in November, being November now.
Oh my God.
So November 13th, 1974, Ronald DeFeo Jr., also known to his friends and family as Butch, ran into Henry's bar yelling, "You've got to help me. I think my mother and father are shot." So a group of people from the bar, which they all, like the townspeople all frequented. So it wasn't like a bunch of strangers. This is a bunch of people that probably knew Ronald. So they all go back to the house with them, where they find both of Ronald's parents, Ronald Sr. and Louise, dead. One of the people, in which they should have done to begin with, one of the people in the party called the police once they discovered the bodies, who met them at the scene. So when they further
the good old 70s, they don't call till later.
Right? Like someone could have called maybe as soon as someone came in and said, "I think my parents are shot." Yeah, that would have been the time I would have called. So when they further search the house, they find the bodies of all 4 of the other DeFeo children: Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John Matthew, all dead. In their beds, laying face down with gunshot wounds from a Marlin 336C rifle. I don't know if I'm saying it right. It's either 336C or 336C, but you never know which way is the right way to say gun names.
No, and I'm happy that you don't know, so that's okay.
Does it make you feel better?
A little bit.
I will ask my husband later. So when the autopsy, I guess, shows that the murders happened around 3 in the morning, and that both parents had been shot twice, while the children were each shot once. And the only people that were awake at the time of death were Allison and Louise. I'm not really sure how they know that. I really don't understand how they know that which ones were awake. Maybe their eyes were open, or I don't know. I'm making shit up as I go now. But they know that Louise and Allison were awake at the time of their death. So when they first questioned Ronald at the scene, he suggested that the murders had been committed by Luis Fellini, who was a mob hitman. So to protect him, they took him to the police station. But after they investigated a bit, they found that Luis actually had an alibi for the night and he wasn't even in the area. But when they got him to the station and they started asking him more questions, Ronald started changing his story and kept changing his story. Like every time he told it, it was different. So the day after their bodies were discovered, Ronald finally admitted to committing the murders himself. He was quoted as saying, "Once I started, I just couldn't stop. It went so fast." And now the thing is, it's never actually been clear the timeline of what happened, who was killed when. It sounds like from the account it just happened really quickly, and he just killed everybody. But he also admitted to the next morning, after killing his whole family, he had a bath, got rid of the gun and his bloody clothes, and went to work as if nothing had happened. And it's the same with the kid. How do you do that? How do you act as if you didn't just do the most horrendous, awful thing in the whole wide world? How do you not acknowledge that in some way in your demeanor? Anyway.
Oh, it's so creepy. So, the fact that their bed's still I know you're going to get into it, but it just trips me right out.
I know. So October 14th, 1975, almost a year after the murders, Ronald's trial began. He pleaded insanity, claiming that the voices in his head told him to do it. He also said he heard his family were plotting against him, so he really was trying to play up that insanity plea that he was psychotic at the time and didn't know what he was doing. So there were two psychiatrists involved in the case. One supported, obviously the defense one, surprise, surprise, supported Ronald's plea to insanity, while the other did find that he had been using LSD, and had a personality disorder, as well as using heroin, but he still said that Ronald had been of sound mind when he committed the murders.
Oh boy.
They never really understood why he did it. There was some talk about the fact that it was for insurance money, though there's no clear answer to that because he admitted very quickly that he did it. So if you did it for the insurance money, you'd think you'd try a little harder to hide it. And then November 21st, 1975, Ronald was found guilty of all 6 counts of second-degree murder. So he didn't even get first-degree murder, which is the planning. He got second-degree murder, but not that it matters because he was sentenced to 6 consecutive sentences of 25 to life. So he couldn't run them concurrently. He back-to-back 25 years to life. Sorry, you said something about the beds.
Oh, no, just so the thing with the story that trips me out is the fact that they're all still in their beds.
Oh, yeah.
If I'm sleeping and I start hearing gunshots, you bet your fucking ass I'm getting out of that house. I'm not going to lay in bed. Yes, sorry. I am
just about to get there. So to kind of wrap up the general story of what happened, he currently still resides in Green Haven Correctional Facility in Beekman, New York, and has been denied all of his appeals to date. So he's still alive and well in prison. Well, maybe not well. He's not well.
He's alive, though.
But he's alive and still serving time. So this is where the controversy comes in, and there's a lot. So when they first investigated, police believed there were 2 shooters because they couldn't understand how he could go from room to room because everybody was in their beds, and I can't remember how many bedrooms. It was like a big home, right? So with 2 daughters and 2 sons and 2 parents, that's 6 people he killed, and nobody was awake, and he didn't use a suppressor on the gun, so there's no, there was nothing muffling the sound of the rifle. There was no sedatives that were in anybody's system, so they couldn't understand how he could kill everybody, and nobody woke up. Not to mention, there were neighbors in the area that were actually awake at the time of the murders, and they said that they didn't hear any gunshots. The only thing they heard was the family dog barking. That's it. Oh. So now is some of the, I know, it's spooky. It is spooky, and I think this is partly why people started to create these stories of haunting and stuff, right? Because it is really creepy. So over the years, Ronald has told many different versions of the story of what happened that night. One of them kind of actually has some plausibility to me, but I don't know. You tell me what you think. So one of the versions was that his sister Dawn killed his father. Then his mother, in a fit of rage, killed all the children, including Dawn. And then he killed his mother in retaliation for the death of his siblings. There is nothing supporting the claim that his mother shot anybody. Dawn, however, did have gunpowder on her, which is usually a sign that a person had fired a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Ronald Sr. was known to be abusive to his family, and on this particular night, Luis had called Ronald Jr., according to him, had called Ronald Jr. to come home because Dawn and her father were fighting. He claimed in this version of the story that he took the blame instead of saying his mother had done it because he was scared of his grandfather and his father's uncle, who was a captain of the Genovese, I don't know if I'm saying that word right, crime family at the time, and didn't want to upset them by speaking negatively about his mother, which ties into why he tried to blame the mob hitman too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in this version of the story, he also claimed that his girlfriend/wife at the time, like he tried to say he was married and living with someone else at the time, but he wasn't. Like it was proved later that he wasn't. That her brother was with him and witnessed everything, but the brother could never be found to back up that story. In another version of the story, he claimed Dawn and some unknown third party had killed everybody. The unknown person had fled before Ronald could see who it was, and that the only person that he killed in this story was Dawn. He claimed again during this version of the story that his girlfriend's brother was with him and could back up his version of events. So again, he's bringing in this brother. But when
we don't know if this brother exists.
Well, this is exactly it. So when they finally investigated, and I don't know whether if the police investigated this line or if the journalist did, because nobody believed him right from day one. So I don't know if this is a newspaper investigator or the police, but they finally figured out that the brother didn't exist at all, and the girlfriend Geraldine was married to someone else at the time of the murders and didn't actually marry Ronald until way later, which is when his story came out. And he actually had a different girlfriend at the time of the murder. So he's created this really convoluted version of events in this one that's been proved repeatedly never
LSD
happened.
is a hell of a drug.
Well, so is heroin, right?
Yeah.
You put those two together and you just... How you have a fucking coherent thought in your head at all?
Exactly. So maybe he really did believe all these people existed, but they did not.
Exactly. Yeah. So then there was one more version of the story that he told, and that was that he and his sister, as well as two other friends named Augie DeGeneiro and Bobby Kelsky, did the murders together. In this story, Ronald claimed him and Dawn planned to kill just their parents, but during the act, she decided to kill the children as well to eliminate witnesses. And in a rage, he knocked her unconscious and shot her in the head. So going back to his original claim that Dawn had done some of the shooting and the gunpowder on her that sort of supported his theory, a ballistics expert actually went in and proved that because of the close proximity that the gun had to where she was shot, like he had to have been really, really close range for that to happen, that could have sprayed unburned powder on her as well. So it could have actually come off of him and the gun and not necessarily from her doing the shooting. So that kind of cleared her name a bit and explained why there was gunpowder on her and not other people. There's also a lot of other theories around the murders. Like there was talk of the close relationship between him and Dawn, but I didn't really go down that rabbit hole because I feel like it would have been there all night last night, and it didn't really seem there wasn't a lot of talk in the case notes about it. So I was like, if there's not a lot of talk in it here, there's probably not a whole lot to back up that theory, right? So that is it for Ronald himself and the actual murders. Shall we move on to the Lutz family?
Yes.
Do you know who the Lutzes are?
I know that you'll have to explain it to me again, but I know that they moved in, after the murders happened?
Yes. So they moved,
okay.
So the Lutz family bought 112 Ocean Avenue, which is the home that everything happened in December of 1975. So they bought it a little over a
Oh.
year after the murders happened, and they only lived in the house for 28 days before they left, claiming it was haunted.
Of
Yeah.
course. Who the fuck
So,
wants to live there?
full disclosure here, I have always been on the fence about what I believe when it comes to hauntings and stuff like that. I
Well,
think.
I want to,
Go ahead.
yeah, I want to go see this house, but I sure as fuck wouldn't buy it and move my family in.
No,
Like,
no, exactly. So I am pretty confident in the fact that nothing has ever happened in my life where I could say that was a fucking ghost. But I'm also not going to go move into a house that has high risk of that either, because that just
yeah.
then no, I'm not interested in that. So I'm kind of on the on the fence about how I feel about ghosts. So I don't know, but I also there's a lot proving that most of this stuff didn't happen. But their story is so they knew from the day that they moved in what had happened in the house. It's really hard to be in Amityville and not know what happened, especially when it was only a year
Yeah.
later. So the claim that they didn't know seems kind of suspicious on its own. So they moved in with Kathy's 3 children and their dog. After fleeing the home, they wrote a book detailing the haunting, but their story has been widely discredited and was found to have been a hoax. But that story became the movie my mom watched when I was a kid. It made them money, so I don't think they really cared whether people thought they were a hoax or not, really. Like,
Hmm.
they made a shit ton of money off of this. Why would they give a shit? So, here's the claims that they made in the book. Some of it they did admit was they said was fictionalized for the story, but most of it they tried to say actually happened. But they could prove false all of these things. So one of them, and this was a big one, was the priest that blessed the house having a paranormal experience. And that was actually one of the biggest scenes in the movie, right? Was this priest sitting in the room and the flies were coming in, the blisters, and the house telling him to get out. Like it was that was the creepy moment in the movie. But the priest, when asked about it again, he did say he heard the someone say get out, but he stopped short of actually saying that it was something paranormal. And he did say that there was blistering on his hands and that he felt like a slap on the face. So some of it he does say happened, but he never actually says he believed it was ghosts or anything like that. They also claim that there were damaged locks, doors, and windows from this haunting, but the next owners of the home actually proved that everything in the house was still original, including all the locks, doors, and windows. So they actually proved that it still had all those things that the Lutzes said were broken. They also claim that there was a hidden room in the basement, but it was actually a small closet, and there's no way the Lutzes didn't know that it was there. They said that it was built on a site where natives left their mentally ill and dying, but local Native American leaders said that's untrue. There were claims of cloven hoof prints in the snow, but when meteorologists actually went back to check the weather systems during that time, there was no snow in the area. So
So these Lutzes are just full of shit.
they're full of shit. Exactly. Um, they claim that they called the police multiple times over the things that were happening, but there's 0 calls logged. So after they moved out, they wrote the book. The Lutzes and everyone started reporting on this stuff. Like people, clairvoyants were going to the house. People were. It was becoming this big story of the haunting. It's actually one of the biggest haunting stories in America, right? When you think of a haunted house in America, you picture the Amityville house. I know I do.
Oh, 100%. But I think like because even when you go like on a haunted walk or something like that, you're just like you're so worked up and like what happened exactly there, and you play tricks on yourself, and you're like you get yourself scared. You think you see something, but you don't, and like you get everyone else all riled up around you. So like I
Exactly,
mean.
exactly. So
And the
the
priest hearing get out, that's your fucking body telling you to get the fuck out because there's 6 people murdered here. Like, yeah. That's your instincts. Like, get the fuck out, bro.
get out, just get out. So everyone was writing about this. Everyone started talking about the haunting at the Amityville house. Well, because everyone was talking about it and writing about it, the Lutzes decide that they didn't want other people benefiting from their story. So they sued Ronald DeFeo Jr.'s lawyer. They sued a writer who was working on a story about the haunting. 2 clairvoyants who had studied the home, and 3 news corporations, including Good Housekeeping, for printing articles about the haunting. Yeah, they claimed that it was an invasion of privacy, that it was misappropriation of names for trade purposes, and mental distress. And they were wanting $4.5 million for this.
Oh my God.
So you don't sue a lawyer unless you're ready for a countersuit. Ronald's lawyer,
Yep.
the writer, and one of the clairvoyants countersued for fraud and breach of contract. So,
oh my God.
Yeah. Their case against the news corporations was dropped for lack of evidence, and their case against the remaining parties was dismissed. The next owner lived there for 10 years and never experienced anything. And future owners of the home, all of them have said they've never had any issues, nothing that even made them feel like there was anything haunted about the home, and they've lived happily lives in there. Having said that, again, the Lutzes, they didn't care, because at the time of her death in 2004, Kathy Lutz had a net worth of $13 million, and George, when he died in 2006, was worth $6 million. So what do they care if people believe their story or not?
Yeah, 100%.
And that is the story of the DeFeo murders, as well as the added little story of the Lutzes, who I kind of feel were a bit of con artists.
So I love that story so much. I always I want to drive there and I want to see the house. Like all these other people that have bought it, lived in it since, and say that they haven't felt anything. Like you're some kind of fucked up to want to buy that house to begin with, just because such a big tragedy did happen there. But yeah, I mean, I would 100% eat dinner there. I'm just not going to go to sleep.
See, I think just because of the murders, not even with the haunted stuff, just because of the murders, it would creep me out. I don't think I could eat dinner in there. I just couldn't do it.
I could eat dinner, but I'm going to leave after dessert. I'm not staying for a nightcap. I'm good.
I find those location things are fascinating. I would love there. I want to look it up, because I think in Hollywood, in somewhere in California, there is like a bus tour you can take of different murder houses and stuff. I would be down for that, but stepping foot inside of them, nope. I'm good.
Oh, okay. Well, you wait outside for me, and I will be in there.
Okay.
Then the other stop I need to make is Milwaukee, because there's some fucked up type of individuals there.
That's a very weird and random place to want to go, but I'm down.
Well, they had both Dahmer and Ed Gein, so
that's true.
There's some fucked up stuff in the water there. I'm not going to have a drink, but I want to pass on through just to say that I've been there.
It's crazy though. Some people, there's some houses that people burn the fuck down after this shit, because why? The memories are just so awful. I don't know if I could live in a house that I knew a whole family was murdered in. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's so crazy that people just kept buying that house and living there, and that they're still. I mean, I guess it's been a long time now, but still, it's crazy. And that family, the Lutzes, made a lot of money.
Well, and the one woman that owned the house, she even said the worst problem they have is people coming up and saying, "Is this the murder house?" That's the worst of it, is these people that keep coming back wanting to see the house, right? So it's just crazy.
Of course. They would always be on display. You're outside pushing your kids in a swing, and people are like, "Is this where the family was murdered?" Go inside, Lucy.
Block your ears! Block your ears! Don't listen to the crazy lady. Her name is Sheena.
Yeah. Whoever lives there now, beware, I will be there.
Someday we will make it there.
It's such a cool story, and I have to be 100% honest. I've never watched the movie, just because I simply I make jokes, but I can't handle ghost stuff. I can't. I absolutely can't. It scares the bejesus out of me. I can watch serial killer documentaries forever, but you give me some sort of a paranormal movie and I'm done. I will not sleep for weeks. I can't shower without opening the curtain constantly. I'm terrified all the time. So I 100% can say I have not seen the movie.
See, hauntings don't scare me. Paranormal normal stuff, it bores me. It's not there for me. It doesn't do it for me. Now, if you put a serial killer in my closet and you tell me to go like in my thoughts, like there's a serial killer down in the closet, no, not sleeping for days. Like something that I feel could actually happen to me terrifies me. So those movies that have the murderer, like those type of horror movies, yeah, those do me in.
That's so funny.
And
That's
it's
what
funny.
rationally scare me. No, I'm scared of fucking Casper. Like,
All right, it's we're on opposite ends there. Where I'm like, nope, I will watch Casper all day long, and he doesn't bother me, but the man under the bed does. Like, oh Jesus.
you know what I was going to do, but I had to stop myself because I knew I would not sleep well here. I rented this cottage and I was like, this is really amazing. I'm going to take the opportunity, and I think it would be cool if I Googled Airbnb murders.
No.
And I started to,
No.
and then I was like, Sheena, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why would you put yourself through that and not be able to sleep for 3 days? So I've decided once I get home, I'm going to Google it, but I'm not going to while I'm here still because
that's
I'll be up all night.
Choice. That is a really good choice. Oh my God.
I don't always make the best choices, but I stopped myself from doing that, which is good.
Well, that is exciting. So, what are we going to do next? What did we decide on?
Well, I think we thought we would be a little bit cheesy and do a themed episode.
Oh yes.
So because it's Christmas time, we thought we would do something along the lines of like Santa's sleigh, ha ha ha. So we're gonna look up some episodes or some stories on, someone killing in a Santa suit or Christmas murders or something like that. And then Crystal, you mentioned an exoneration story,
yes.
which is really cool because I do love those stories a lot.
I love exoneration stories, and I think that's something we should do regularly as a part of the mix is exoneration stories, because you know what? Yeah, Ronald DeFeo, he definitely did it, but sometimes they don't get the guy. Sometimes they get the wrong guy. So listening to those stories and what actually happened to those people is really fascinating. And I just watched one which was so well done. I'm not going to tell you what it is yet because I don't want people going and watching it before you listen to our episode about exoneration. That's just stupid.
Exactly. No, they're really cool. They do kind of break my heart sometimes because there's a couple stories, Central Park 5, things like that. It kills me. The fact that people have been in jail for that long for something that they clearly did not do. But it is kind of
like the ones whose names don't get cleared until after they're dead.
I know, and it's like hard. It's so hard and it's heartbreaking, but it is cool when, maybe cool is not the right word, but it's when someone does get cleared and they do have, some more years to live outside of, jail. It's nice to see that people have stuck by them and fought for them and kind of cleared their names. So those stories are really awesome, and I'm super excited to look into a bunch of them for this podcast.
Well, I like that, and I like the fact that it kind of gives a bit more of an awareness, right?
Yeah, no, it's really cool. It's really neat stuff. It's sad that people eventually get their names cleared and, be able to walk outside again and try to live somewhat of a normal life.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, I think that was it for me. Did you have anything else?
No, I think that's it for me as well. I'm going to have some more wine and get my fire going and might go build a snowman. Probably not.
There's no snow.
It's dark outside.
It's also raining here. I'm sure it's coming your way, but if you've got snow, count yourself lucky because we don't anymore. It's just slush.
Oh. Okay, well, I'll go play in the snow while it's here.
All right. Well, that is it for us then. Do we have some thing we want to say goodnight or goodbye, or I don't know.
All I have right now is bye.
Let's come up with something less
annoying.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking, but didn't want to say.
Yeah.
So let's think of a different way to sign off. We'll come back to that.
Perfect. Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys, and we'll talk to you later.
Okay. Bye.